As usual tonight, shiur Leilu Nishmat Avi Marido Ber Meir Ben Reuven Halevi Imi Marti Rachel Bat Harav Michael. And tonight we're going to be talking about, and of course the shiur should be l'zechia for all of the chayalim who are out protecting Am Yisrael, and Hashem should watch over also the remaining shvuyim who have not yet been repatriated, returned home, and that Hashem we should ultimately see that all happen, and we should return to whatever normal is in this neck of the woods. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about as this parshat is Vayishlach, which actually the primary the beginning of the parshat basically talks about what did I just do here? What did I just do here? The primary part of the parsha, as I said, talks about the first thing in the parsha is the reunion between Yaakov and Esav. We're not going to be talking about that tonight, but immediately after that, when we read they go their separate ways, we have this story about Dina and an incident that happens, and that's what we're going to be focusing on tonight. So which is chapter 34 in Bereshit, and we're going to start by first going through very quickly the Pesukim and trying to highlight a couple of points, and then we're going to try to see what the Parshanim have to say about some of those points. So the Parsha begins with Vateitze Dina bat Leah she'oldol Yaakov l'rot bivnot haaretz. Dina, this daughter of Leah that had been born to Yaakov, went out l'rot to either to see or be seen bivnot haaretz with or among the daughters of the land. Vayarot Shechem ben Chamor achivi nisi haaretz. Shechem, the son of Chamor, who was one of the princes or the prince of the land, who was a Chivite, saw her, Vayikach ota, he takes her, Vayishkav ota, he sleeps with her, Vaya'aneha, and he afflicts her. Batidbak nafsho b'Dina and bat Yaakov. His heart very much desired Dina, the daughter of Yaakov, Vayahavet hanara, and he loved this young lady, Vayidaber alev hanara, and he spoke to her. If I can ask everybody who's on the Zoom to please mute. Thank you. So Shechem now goes to his father Chamor and says, I want you to take this Yalda to be my wife. Notice she has two different names here. First, she's called a Na'ara, and then she's called a Yalda. How old she is? Great question. I can't give you an answer. If the Torah is in chronological order, and if we go according to the traditional Seder Olam of how Yaakov's life plays out. When they left Haran, she was probably in the neighborhood of 7 years old, 6 to 7. How long they were on the road? A couple of years. So she is somewhere probably between 7 and 10 years old at this time, at this juncture. That's if the story is in chronological order. If it's not in chronological order, she could be any age, but clearly after they left Lavan, so she's at least 6+ years old because we read about her birth before Yaakov decides it's time to go home the first time from Lavan. Okay, so again, but you'll notice, as I said, the Torah calls her first a Nara, then it calls her a Yalda. So as I say, she could have been probably somewhere in that age range, at least according to that chronology. The Yaakov Shama Kiti Donatvi. So that's the first thing is what happens. Now Yaakov hears Kitimei Dina Vitoa that his daughter has been made impure, whatever that means. But his sons were out with the sheep in the field. Yaakov ad Boab, and Yaakov remained silent until they arrived. So very interesting part of the story is that Yaakov seems to not take a part in the discussion about what's to happen or what will happen. Now Chamor, the father of Shechem, goes to Yaakov Daberito. He wants to have a nice mechun talk here, and let's see what we can work out here. Now the sons of Yaakov came in from the field when they heard by Atzvu Anashim. They were sad And they were very upset, angry. Because an abomination had been done in Israel, Yaakov, to sleep with the daughter of Yaakov. Such a thing should not be done. It seems like a very redundant pasuk. The commentaries focus on what is all these different terms means, but again, I said not going to be our focus tonight. Vayidaber Chamor itam lemor. So Chamor speaks to them and says the following: Shechem, my son, very much desires your daughter. Tanuna otat lolisha, please give him to her as a wife. Vitchatnu otanu, and we will, we'll get married. We'll join you. We'll have other people in our town who you might want to marry. Benotenu titanu lanu, our daughters we will give to you. Viet benotenu tikhu lachem, and you can, and we, our sons, you can take for yourselves. So interestingly enough, they, as Chamor presents this, he is giving the prerogative to the sons to Yaakov and his sons to make the choices of who they would like to pick from the daughters and who of their sons they would like to give to them, or they will of which of those. Let's go back. Benotechem, your daughters you will give to us. Basically, you'll have the choice of which daughters you want to give, and our daughters you will take for yourselves, whichever ones you'd like. Vitanu teshevu, and you will live together with us. The land will be in front of you. Shavu, dwell, usacharua, and engage in commerce in it. Be'achazuba, and take possession of it. So he's basically thinks this is a commercial deal. You'll get married. They'll get married. We'll have other marriages. We'll join together, and we'll all live happily ever after. Vayomer, now that's what his father says to them. Now Shechem says, wait, obviously it seems that obviously they were not impressed by this presentation. So Shechem decides to speak up. I would like to find favor in your eyes. Whatever you tell me, I will give. You can, whatever you want me to pay. No, I will give it. Whatever you tell me. I'm willing to pay any price for this girl. I really want her. I want to marry her. I want her to be my wife. I'll pay whatever you ask. No limits here. Sky's the limit. Vayanu v'nei Yaakov et Shechem. Hang on a minute. My thing just went here. Vayanu v'nei Yaakov et Shechem et Chamor viv b'mirma vayidaberu. Now, the sons of Yaakov answer Shechem and Chamor. Again, they each spoke, so obviously they're speaking to them, but it's the sons who are answering, not Yaakov. B'mirma. I'm going to leave Mirma untranslated for a minute, although I'll give you a little thing, Rashi, and based on Unclus translates it as wisely. They cunningly, Mirma often means cunningly. That's correct. But Rashi translates it chokhmata, wisely, carefully. In other words, they chose their words carefully by Daber when they spoke. Now, the reason, interestingly enough, we then have this parenthetically, well, this is not what they said, by the way. Asher time at Dina achotam, because he had made their sister Dina impure, or he had defiled her. There's a good word. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. Vayomer alehem. So here's what they said to him. You shouldn't think Asher time at Dina achotam is what they said to him. Vayomer alehem. Here's what they said to him. Lo nuchal asod hadavar hazeh. We cannot accept your offer. Why? To give our daughter, our sister, to a man who has his foreskin. This is an abomination for us, or it's a disgrace, something shameful to us. If you want to join us, this is how we will accept. If with you do this, if you will become like us, to circumcise all your males. Then we will give our daughters to you. We'll take your daughters. We'll live with you. And we'll be one nation. But now they give the second half of the condition. If you're not going to listen to us to circumcise all your males, then we're going to take our daughter Vehalachnu, and we will leave. So again, first and foremost, the fact that they have to take her tells us one thing very interestingly, that through all these negotiations, where is Dina? She is with them. She is being held, whether willingly or against her will, we don't know at this point, but we know that she hasn't come home yet. Okay, that's clearly because otherwise they wouldn't have had to say, "V'lakachna, we will take her." They would have just said, "We'll believe you. We'll see you tomorrow." But the fact that they say we have to take your daughter, so we have to understand that this whole negotiations or discussion is taking place while she is missing. Yeah, okay. Chamor said, "Oh, sounds like a great idea." And Shem says, "It was fine." That he was gung ho to do this. Why? He really had this thing for Yaakov's daughter. That's why he wants to do whatever they tell him. He said, "I'll do whatever you tell me to do." Plus, he was the most. He was obviously, I guess, he's the firstborn. He's the heir apparent. He's the what's the word? The fair-haired boy. He's got whatever he wants, he gets, and he's the most honored one among the whole family. So they decide, well, they ask, we're going to make it happen. They come to the gate of the city. Where else do you meet? Where else does business get transacted? The gate of the city. They speak to all that. They have a whole announcement in front of the whole city. They're saying the following: these people who we're dealing with, they are at peace with us. They're dwelling here and they've got lots of commerce they want to engage in. And look, the land is spread out before them. We will take amongst from their daughters whoever we would like to be wives. And we will choose which of our daughters to give to them. However, they have one condition before they'll agree to join and become one nation, and that is we all have to get circumcised. However, if we get circumcised, there's an incentive. There's a big incentive here. Why? Look, all we have to do is get circumcised, and we'll be able to absorb them into us. Look at their pretty wealthy group here. Look at all the cow, sheep, possessions, all their animals. They got a lot of stuff here that they came into our neighborhood with. We'll be able to absorb all of that. Let's just agree to their terms, and then we'll live together, and we'll be able to absorb them. And that means higher standard of living for everybody, because everybody will be able to get a portion of what they got. So they listened and heard what he said. They decided to circumcise all the males. Everybody who passed through the gate, all the males get circumcised. And the story continues. 3 days, the third day after this whole discussion takes place, everybody obviously is in a little bit of pain from having just had their circumcision. Remember, it's not a little baby, 8-day-old baby who theoretically heals a little bit faster. These are all we're talking about males grown up, a little bit more serious surgery, perhaps takes a little bit longer to recover. They're all koavim. They're all in a lot of pain. Shnei b'nei Yaakov, 2 sons of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi. Everyone tells us who they are. Achei Dina, they're Dina's brothers. Ish charbo, each one takes his sword. Vayavo al ha'ir betach, they come upon the city betach, assuredly. Vayagu kol zachar, and they kill all the males. Yet Chamor yet Shechem beno, and Chamor and Shechem his son Hargu lefi charav, they kill by the sword. Vayichlet Dina, and then they take Dina Beit Shechem, from Shechem's house, and they leave the city, or they leave the house, perhaps. Presumably they left the city too. But then in verse 27, Bnei Yaakov. Now again, we are not sure if this Bnei Yaakov is referring to the same Bnei Yaakov we have highlighted in yellow above. Good question. They approach all of the corpses, and they take all of the spoils of the city. Asher timuach otam, the city that had defiled their sister. What do they take? At Sonam, their sheep, the Karam, their cattle, Chamoream, all the donkeys, Whatever's in the city, whatever's out in the field, they took. All of their wealth, their children, Shechem and their wives, all the women and children, Shavu, they took as prisoners, Vayavozu, and they took all the spoils. And there was some of the, obviously, Shavu Shvi refers usually to people, Biza refers possessions, Viet Kol Asher Babayit, and whatever was in everybody's house. They just took everything. Suddenly, we now have Yaakov speak. Yaakov has been silent up till now. Suddenly, after the whole thing is over, he suddenly says, Vayomer Yaakov el Shimon v'Levi. He doesn't talk to Bnei Yaakov. He speaks to Shimon and Levi. Achartem oti. You have left me in some way defenseless. Lavisheni b'yoshev haaretz, to cause me embarrassment or to make me foul in the eyes of the inhabitants of the land. The other Canaanites and the Perizzites. We are a small clan. If they will gather upon me, they will be able to come and fight against me. And we're all going to get wiped out. He basically says, what did you guys do? What were you thinking when you did all this? Didn't you think that somebody was going to come and avenge them? And their answer is very simply, should our sister be treated like a harlot? Very, very simple answer. The parsha ends there. That's it. We don't hear anything else. No response from Yaakov until many years later. Yaakov on his deathbed says the following to Shimon and Levi, which we'll quote from Parshat Vayechi. Shimon and Levi, Achim, Shimon and Levi are brothers. Again, notice it says Achei Dina. They called them brothers. They're the weapons of destruction are their tools. Okay, this is what he says. In their anger, they killed a man. They wanted to destroy an oxen. And this is what he says. Cursed be their anger because it is very strong. So whether Yaakov, what did Yaakov mean here? Why did he do it? We're going to see if we can get into that a little bit, but I don't know that we're going to get to that. We'll see how time goes. Okay. Now I wanted to focus firstly on the brothers' plan. What was the original plan? Was the original plan that they were going to just go and kill everybody? If that's the case, what was the problem? So we're going to see how the parshanim deal with that, because that's one of the key issues of this is when the brothers make this, quote, offer to Shechem and Hamor to all get circumcised, what was their intent? What was their goal of making that offer? What were they trying to achieve and accomplish? So Rashi says, as I said before, Rashi says, B'mirma, when it says mirma, it means b'chokhmah, wisely. Again, he gets that from Onkelos. Why? Shiur timei. The Torah says that because of the fact that Shechem had defiled Dina, they were acting wisely. Shalohaita remia, that we shouldn't translate mirma as remia, as trickery. Why? Because since he had started this, basically, he's the aggressor, he's the protagonist, he's the starter, he started it. Whatever response you give, be wise about it, but it's justified. In other words, Rashi's saying there's no trickery here, there's no falsehood here, because they were acting to defend the honor of their sister. Now, Sforno says, B'mirma, very interestingly, he doesn't translate whether it's chachma or what. He says the following: Sha'alu sheyimolu, that the brothers' intent in requiring that everybody get a brit milah was very simple. B'chashvam shelo yikablu aleihem. Very simple. That firstly they thought they're not going to want to get circumcised. They're not going to accept this. Oh, and even if they agree to get circumcised, they're certainly not going to be able to convince the whole city to get circumcised. So their whole intent was basically just to quash the deal, say, forget it, it's not happening, and get Dina home. That, at least Sforno's approach. Ramban has a nice long thing. Okay, now, firstly, again, as I said before, Tama Pius was there. Why does Shechem say, oh, I'll pay any price? Because Shechem wants very much that they should accede and agree to give her as his wife. She wasn't so keen upon it. Ramban's opinion is she wasn't so keen. She was very upset about what had happened, and she was crying. She wanted to go home, basically. That's Ramban's take. There's that time, and this is why it says he had to speak to try to make her feel good, to appease her. And that's why he wants her to be his wife. She was already in his house, and he was controlling her already. He was not afraid of her brothers coming. He's the head honcho. Nobody's starting up with him. He wasn't afraid that the brothers were going to come and try to rescue her. He was fully confident that whatever happened, he would remain in control. That's his whole focus, is remaining in control. There was no way they could steal her to bring her back home, take him out of his house. Okay. And he goes into why he loved her. Okay. Okay, now, it seems Ramban very much picks up, as many of the Parshim, that Chamor and Shem speak both to Yaakov and to the brothers. Yaakov does not get involved in the negotiations, in the discussion at all. Why did his son speak up in his name in this matter? That was because of his honor, because of the honor of Yaakov. We should not think, Ramban says, that the brothers were stepping on Yaakov's toes. They were protecting Yaakov from getting involved in this dirty, sordid affair. Yaakov, because of the embarrassment, the sense of shame, did not want to discuss this at all with them. Yaakov really wanted to have nothing to do with them at all. However, the Yesh Kan Shela, Ramban asked the basic fundamental question. Shadavar nir'ah, it appears if we listen and read the story in the Torah, Kibratzon avia uv'atzato in anu, that brothers, the answer they gave clearly was acceptable to Yaakov. The suggestion that the brothers made seemingly, and whatever they had in mind, clearly seemed to be acceptable to Yaakov. They were standing in front of him. And he understood what they were going to answer. Because they spoke wisely. If that's the case, that Yaakov agreed to whatever the plan was, lama ka'as. Why at the end of the story and in Vayishlach, why is Yaakov upset at the brothers for what they did? That's the question Ramah wants to answer. But again, he goes even further. It's obvious that Yaakov had no intent of allowing this marriage to take place. He had no intent to allow his daughter to marry this guy who had defiled her. And since the brothers answered wisely, Shimon and Levi seemed to be the only ones who were involved in other words, they were all involved in the original plan, but it seems that Shimon and Levi overstepped the bounds of the original plan. Ramban seems to imply that there's a plan A, and then there's the plan B is what really happened. Okay? What does that mean? What was the plan A? Okay? The of Aurora Pam has lahem levadam. That's why he was upset at their anger, because they did not think when they took whatever step 2 was. Step 2 was obviously going and wiping out the whole city. But Tshuva, okay, and so now Rama wants to try to get a little bit behind what was Yaakov thinking, what were the brothers thinking. Ki amir ma'haita, the deception was by Ramli Molahem Kol Zachar, asking them to all get circumcised. Ki chashvu shelo yasu kein b'nei. The brothers were sure they were putting it on the table. You get this done, okay? Because they were sure it wasn't going to happen. There's no way he's going to be able to convince the whole city to get Brit Milah. Not going to happen. V'mulah yishme'ulah nisiyim. And even if, here's the original plan according to Ramban, even if, worst case, yishme'ulah nisiyim yu kulam nimolim. Okay, worst case, they're all going to circumcise themselves. What will happen? Yavo b'yom hashlishi b'yotam koavim will come on the third day when everybody is suffering the pain. What do? V'chad b'tami beit Shem. then because nobody will be there defending this house, they'll be able to find Shechem's house, find Dina, and rescue her, period. In other words, debilitate the whole male population so there's nobody there to oppose them when they go to rescue Dina. And that was what all of the brothers agreed to, and Yaakov agreed to. The Shimon the Levi, however, Shimon the Levi said, ain't enough. They wanted to take a revenge against the whole city. They killed all the people of the city. That's Ramban's perspective. And therefore it appears he was angry at them because they killed all the people of the city that didn't sin. They should have just killed Shechem, period. That would have been all they needed to do. They all agreed to make this side plan. Everybody agreed to that. So if that's the case, now Raman has a different question, okay? So we just realized that plan A was they weren't going to accept. Okay, that was plan A, that this whole thing was an offer that they figured there's no way they're going to accept it. Worst case is they accept it, and then we will go and rescue Dina once they've accepted and they're all weak. Somehow the plan went awry. That's not the way it played out. However, Rabbi Yishalu, so now Ramban says, wait a minute, now I have one more question. How is it possible that Yaakov's sons, these are 12 tribes, we see, these are our 12 role models. If these people, the whole city, were, quote, innocent in this whole story, how could we go and kill all these innocent people? Okay, so again, very simple question, right? Are the people in the city guilty? And then we should kill them? Or are they not? Are they complicit? Are they supportive? Or are they totally, quote, collateral damage? What is it? We don't know. That's what Raman is asking. That's what he's saying. Now, Rambam in Sefer Shoftim tries to answer in basically the following. He says, Shebnei Noach mitzvah al dinim. One of the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach is dinim. You have to establish courts of law. They have to have courts that punish offenders, those that transgress the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach. The punishment among Noachites for transgressing one of the Noachite commandments is death. There's no mitigating circumstance, no nothing. Okay? If a Noachite sees another Noachite transgress one of these mitzvot and doesn't bring him to justice, he is just as guilty. So now he becomes complicit because he didn't bring his fellow to justice. Therefore, all of the city of Shechem, they're all guilty. Because he stole her. They saw the Yadu, and they knew what had happened below Danua, and they didn't bring him to justice. And that is why they punished the whole city. However, that's from Rambam's opinion. Ramban says, can't be. Can't be the reason. Why can't it be the reason? What do you mean? Rambam made a very strong presentation. What's wrong with it? She'im came. If that were the case, Yaakov would have been leading the troops. If it's a mitzvah to carry out the commandments of Bnei Noach and to kill these people because they didn't, then it's a mitzvah. Everybody, who's the first person leading a mitzvah? The tzaddik of the door, the gadol of the door. Yaakov should have been the one leading the charge. What do you mean? He was sitting on the sidelines? He should have been first. If he was afraid and he didn't want to do it, why was he afraid? Why did he get angry at his sons? And after all this time, finally, when he's on his deathbed, he curses their anger. And he punishes them. They merited to do a great mitzvah, according to Rambam. What was it? And in addition, they did this mitzvah with great mesirat nefesh because they trusted that Hashem was going to protect them. Yaakov, how can you ask for anything more? Here, we got a mitzvah to do. These guys went out and did it. So Rambam, I can't agree with you. Shita Rambam says because that doesn't fit the facts. Yaakov wouldn't have been upset and angry at them. Maybe if he was angry at the time, but he wouldn't have cursed them all these years later if that was the reason. If this, what is this? Okay. The Aldati, and therefore Ramban is going to go off on a whole tangent now and talk about what does this mitzvah of Sheva B'nai Noach of Dina mean for B'nai Noach? It basically means, yes, they have to have judges. However, I'm going to skip this inside, but he basically says that there's no punishment for not bringing somebody to justice. The punishment is meted out for transgressing one of the other commandments. However, for not bringing somebody to justice, there's no such command. That's what Ramban's theory is and thesis is. Okay, and he goes through. So therefore, if I, as a Ben Noach, do something, then that's punishable by death. If I'm a judge and I accept a bribe, if I cheat somebody, I steal from somebody, I kill somebody, I take somebody else's wife, any of those things is punishable by death. However, if I see you do it and I don't bring you to justice, I don't get that's not punishable by death, according to Ramban. Okay. Right. Okay. Aval Inyan Shechem. So now he goes back. So now that he's thrown out Rambam's reasoning, he has to come up with his own reasoning. Aval Inyan Shechem ki b'nei Yaakov bavur shehayu anshe Shechem rishayim, because the men of Shechem were rishayim. V'davam chashuv lem k'mayim, and since they were all a bunch of idolaters and sinners, their value, their lives are not worth anything. He wanted to take revenge on them for all the other things they did wrong. It was a good excuse to punish them all, because they're all B'nai Noach and they were all sinners, so we can punish them all. The Hargu HaMelech, therefore they killed the king, and there was the Nasi, Shechem, the Chol Anshe Yiro, and all the city of the people, Ki Avadavhem, because they were his servants. The Sarim El Mishpato, and they were sinning according to his, under his jurisdiction. The fact that they went and got a circumcision didn't mean anything. That they wanted to just accede to what their master said, so they agreed to get Brit Milah. The Yaakov Amarla and Bachan, and Yaakov said, "Wait, if that was the reason you killed them, you put our whole family in danger. Therefore, because they destroyed the whole city. Now he says the other reason he got angry at them at the end, according to Ramban, was because they reneged on their words. They said, wait a minute, if you get your Brit Milah, we'll join you, we'll be together. And they didn't, and then they didn't live up to that agreement. That was why Yaakov was upset at them. They totally ignored what they said they would do. And Yaakov thought, perhaps by the fact that they agreed to have Brit Milah, maybe they'll start doing tshuva and they will change their ways. And Yaakov felt that their death was not necessary because they really hadn't done anything to harm the Jewish people. That's Ramban's shot. Okay, the Orach Chaim. He goes back and says, what was the chachma? It seems as though this was all a ruse, according to Orach Chaim. There was no wisdom here. This was all a trick. What was the intent? Okay. Orach Chaim says, what was the wisdom that they applied to this whole thing? Was that even though the brothers knew it was a ruse, they were able to present it in such a way that they were able to completely and totally deceive the Shechem and his father. This was the intent. The whole plan was they wanted to make sure that they didn't see through it, that they really thought that this was a serious offer. Obviously they did if they went and got them all circumcised. What help would the ruse do if they were extra careful and foiled the ruse because they realized it was a ruse? So the whole point, according to Archaim, the reason it says it was such a wise presentation was that they were able to completely disguise. Then he goes through each of the different stages on how they were able to. I'm going to skip it all because it's later than I thought it was going to be by now. Okay, that basically the whole thing was a ruse, and it was presented so beautifully according to Archaim. That was why it says b'mirmah. All right. Now it says 3 days later they come on the ear and they're betach. They are secure. The Shimon and Levi are sure they're going to be okay. Now the commentators, what does that mean? What does that mean? They were sure. How were they so sure they weren't going to meet any opposition when they went to do it? Rashi gives a very simple answer. That because of the pain of the circumcision, like the Torah says, that's why they were sure they were going to not meet any opposition. Umidrash Agada, the Medrash says, "Betuchim hayu al kolcho shel zakein." They were sure that the merit of their ancestor was going to stand in their stead. That Hashem would watch over them and protect them in the merit of. Now, there's two different opinions of who the zakein is. One says it's the merit of Avram who prayed at Shechem. The other is the merit of Yaakov. Either way, it's they were sure Hashem was going to protect them. Rashbam says, what does it mean? Betach. Betach, why was the brothers sure that they were going to not meet any opposition? Because Rashbam says very simply, the ruse had worked so well that the inhabitants of the city had no thought, that they had no defense, they had no qualms, were not worried at all that they were going to be attacked by Shimon and Levi. Whenever it says betach about somebody who's sitting and living somewhere, it means the same thing, that they feel completely safe and protected and don't have to worry about intruders coming in. Very interesting parish by Rashbam. Klei Akar has a very interesting parish. Klei Akar again amplifies on Rashi. First says, who is the kocho shel zakein? Yesh orin ki zakein hainu Avraham. As Rashi says in Lech Lecha, that Avram prayed when he came to Shechem. However, it makes more sense. Klei Akar gives a very, very powerful psychological reason that's very, very appropriate. Following B'tachin l'farish says very simple. Here's the explanation. They were sure that nobody was going to worry about these inhabitants of the city who got killed. Why? Once they joined the ranks of the circumcised, they no longer are ours, they no longer are brethren, they've forsaken us. And the other Canaanites and Perizzites will not take any revenge on them. Why? Because a Jew kills a Jew, who cares? That's the point. Very, very powerful point Klei Akar makes, that it's okay. They don't care about it. You kill Jews, they don't care. Kill them, then people care. Anybody kills Jews, they don't care. But certainly if Jews are killing Jews, nobody's going to bat an eyelash. Not to worry. That's what it means. Betach, they were sure that nobody was going to worry about them. Take revenge on them. All right. Okay. All right. Now, why on the third day did they come? Chizkuni says the following: they heard what had happened, and they knew that the reason that they had accepted to be circumcised is Shechamor u'shtem shinu et hatanai u'lishonam li'anshei Iram v'tolu hakavod b'anshei Iram v'lo Yaakov uvnei beita. One of the reasons that the people, that it says by the third day they regretted that they had circumcision, was because they realized that they had been tricked. The people realized that they had been tricked by Shechem and Hamor, because when Yaakov and his sons made the offer, they were the ones who would decide who got married to whom. When Shechem and Hamor made the offer to the city, it was the city who would decide who would get married to who. So they felt they would have the upper hand. When they realized they had been tricked, they did not want to go forward. The Ode, similarly, the whole reason they had agreed was Chamor and Shechem promised them, look at all this material wealth we will gain by absorbing them into us. The Lamba B'Yom HaShlishi, why did they wait until the third day? Why did they do it on the day of the Brit Milah? I think, why wait 3 days? It's going to give a very simple answer. Can't circumcise the whole city. They didn't have enough circumcisers to circumcise all the males in one day. Took them 3 days to circumcise everybody. So on the third day, they finished performing the mass circumcisions. Then they were all okay. Now here he finally gives basically gives the same reason that the Rambam gives, that the reason they killed everybody was because they did not bring Shechem to justice. The Orach Chaim. Why? Again, ask the same question. Kasha, lama yagu mi shelo chata. Why did they kill somebody who didn't sin? The Ode, lama lo ikdimu b'val avera tzila. Why did it say only after they kill everybody else, then they finally get to Shechem and Chamor and kill them? Why weren't they the first ones? We would assume they would kill the person who was the lead perpetrator first. First, you get the leader, then go after the troops. Achain. You know why they had to kill the whole city? Their intent originally was only to kill Shechem and Chamor. That's it. Chamor, Shechem, who did it? The whole city came to stand and block them, to defend their Laval Yargum al-Kam, in order that they shouldn't, in order to protect Shechem's castle, because he's the lord of the manor. He is the leader of the district. He's the one who's in charge. So they all came to his defense. Ella al kain hargum midin rodef. So therefore they had to kill everybody else, because now they were fighting against them to defend this, or perhaps and only after they killed everybody else who was defending them were they able to get to Chamor and Shechem. The Zulat Zeh, without killing everybody, without going through, basically they had to go through everybody before they got to Shechem, and that is why they had to kill the whole city. So again, we have a number of different rationales for why they killed everybody. So again, it raises the question, the whole story raises the question that we always have to wrestle with when we are dealing with our enemies. Which of our enemies are active enemies? Which of our enemies are passive enemies? And which of our enemies are not, maybe not enemies? Which of the people, the inhabitants of the area are really just stuck there? And this is a very big question, of course, today that we're wrestling with as we go through the current situation in terms of how many of the people in any Arab territory, whether we call it Gaza or we call it West Bank or we call it Hezbollah territory, which is technically Lebanon, in all of those areas, we have actual terrorists who clearly are mechuyav mita because their goal is to destroy the Jewish people. So we have to kill them before they kill us. And they have made no qualms, no bones about it. Their goal is to kill Jews. And we have to realize that when somebody's out to kill you, you got to kill them first. You're allowed to kill somebody preemptively when their whole raison d'etre is to kill you. However, the challenge often is to figure out those who are not actively members of Hamas, Hezbollah, PLF, whatever the different organizations are called, whether they are actively supporting those organizations or they are people who are unable to declare what they really want because they are afraid of their own lives. And we saw that clearly if you go through any of the stories about the non-Jews or even Jews who helped others during the Holocaust, that this is a major concern. How do you distinguish between the active participants and the passive participants or supporters and those who are not supportive, but they cannot be objective, cannot object. And that's one of the major problems that we are facing currently. But again, if we look through this story, we see there are lots of different issues that we have to deal with. And if we look in the Torah for other cases of stories of people being taken prisoner, we find there are three other stories that are Tanakh where we have people being taken prisoner. Of course, the first is Avram and Lot, and we know that Avram immediately goes to war to rescue Lot, even though he could have said, "Hey, Lot, it's your own fault. Who told you to live in Sodom?" He goes to rescue him, no questions asked. He's willing to go to war for him. So that's one role model. Second role model case we have is later on in the Midbar when the Jews are traveling back to Eretz Yisrael from Egypt. We have a case of a Kanani, Melech Arad, who wages war against Israel and captures prisoners, and immediately Bnei Yisrael go to fight against him and basically destroy him. And the third case, of course, is the story of David HaMelech in Shmuel Aleph, toward the end of Shmuel Aleph, where he's in Tziklag, or where he leaves Tziklag, he leaves the women and children left behind. They are captured and kidnapped by Amalekite raiders, and David HaMelech goes again and basically destroys all the Amalekites to redeem all these captives. So we realize there clearly is precedent for destroying and killing terrorists. We don't have to worry and try to explain to the world why we're doing that. What we do have to understand and be very, very wary of is making sure that we are taking care of the right people and destroying the right people. And at the same time, we also, because of the current situation, it's not one captive or two or a few, we have to also be very careful to do the best we can to safely bring those captives home. That's, again, all of these are lessons that we learn either from this week's parsha, from the story of Avram, from the other stories in Tanakh. And we hope and pray that Kadosh Baruch Hu will give us, will give our leaders the wisdom to make the right choices, to make the right decisions, and our chayalim the strength to continue the battle until HaKadosh Baruch Hu is able to give us a complete victory, and we will be able to once again perhaps restore some semblance of normalcy, and ultimately realize that, yes, there may be some people in those territories who may be willing to give up their terrorism and ultimately accept HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and those are the ones we have to try to find and possibly move forward with, so that we can be an Orla Goyim and teach the world how we deal with these types of situations, because that is our mission. And when we're able to fulfill that mission, we again hope that Kadosh Baruch Hu will bless us and we will be Zocha to Gula Shlem Her V'Yameinu. Thank you all. At this point, I open it up for comments, questions, and feedback. Anybody questions?
I was just wondering.
Yes.
All the members have been killed. The ones who defend.
Yes. Reaction. Good question. David Graham's question was very simply, if according to I forgot who the last one was, I think Chaim, if I'm not mistaken, says that the reason that all of the inhabitants had to be killed was because they came to the defense of Shechem. Why was Yaakov upset? And that's a great question. That's one of the problems that the Parshanim have on that with that interpretation. Clearly, at the time, he's upset because he is still concerned that somebody will avenge their death. He didn't read Clay Yakar's whoever was Kuni, who said that there's no way they're going to come. Once they've had Brit Milah, nobody will care about him. So Yaakov is concerned at the immediate time. 1 minute, David. Is not concerned at the immediate as concerned at the immediate time is that, wait a minute, we're so weak that they'll come and destroy us. Why he curses them later, that's the problem. That's a great question. As I said, it could be related to something else. Clearly, there are those that want to say it's related also to the story of Yosef and Mechirat Yosef, but that's a great question. Okay. David Solder, you had a question or comment?
Comment really. All the men of Shechem were killed, but all the women and children were taken captive, and could be a large volume of women, non-Jewish and children. What happened to all of them?
What happens to them? One of those great questions that we never get answers to. I mean, there's another question. What happens to Dina? Okay, they bring her home. What happens to her? How does the rest of her life go? She never appears again, except she's one of the people who is counted, I think is listed when they go down to Egypt. That's it. She does not, we don't hear anything else about her. That's another thing. But this is why we have Midrash. What happened to them? Great question. I haven't a clue.
Okay.
Yeah, Maurice says servants. I mean, that's, presumably the same thing is asked according to those that when Avraham comes to Eretz Yisrael, it says, "Anefesh asher asu b'Charan," the souls that they had acquired in Haran. Whatever happened to all of them? Great question. We don't have answers to these questions. Presumably, again, they were, they become, as Maurice said, they become, members of the entourage, whether they're servants or they're or helpers or whatever you want to call them, or they freed them. I don't know. Maybe they just let them go. Don't know. Because there's no reason they had to keep them. They wouldn't have kept them because they would have bogged down the whole entourage. So I don't know. They probably just let him go. I mean, we see later on in the parshat that Yaakov stops somewhere on the journey before home and says, we got to get rid of a lot of stuff. And that was basically the stuff, anything that had imprint of Avodah Zarah. He says, you got to get rid of anything that was among the spoils that had been dedicated to idolatry. You have to get rid of. So maybe at the same time, they got rid of the women and children too. I don't know. Great question. Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you all for joining again.